Good morning, welcome to my channel. I'm Dr. Paul Karitzis, and today I'm going to be continuing with the reinterpretation of another myth, the myth of Pygmalion and Galatea, which appears in Ovid's narrative poem Metamorphosis as a story of a sculptor who becomes enamored of his own creation, an ivory statue of a woman. Here it is being contemporized and retold by me. The skeleton of the myth has stayed faithful to the original, though I have taken the liberty that comes with all creative license by altering the narrative style, introducing new scenes and injecting it with themes and ideas indigenous to 21st century philosophical and metaphysical inquiry. Pygmalion regarded his masterpiece in the slivers of moonlight that passed through the windowsill. He pressed the palm of his left hand as to cover the entire forehead from temple to temple, placed his right on the shoulders, and breathed heavily onto the clay statue. "Your name, my love, is Galatea," he repeated several times, before imagining a fourfold division of the prime element into earth, water, air, and fire. Earth, the thickest and densest of the elements, was like a black mist that contained within itself the qualities of cold, sleep, falsehood, and death, and Pygmalion imagined it diffusing into the legs of the statue. Then he visualized water, a volatile fabric that smelt of green, blue, sound, the moon, and hydrogen, soaking into the statue's abdominal region. Air, an element which usually signaled its eternal presence through rustling noises, revealed itself as a constellation of active qualities like life, heat, white, electricity, and heat, and Pygmalion invited it into his creation through the breast region. The last and mightiest, fire, vibrated with light, red, truth, and phosphorus, and was steadfast prompted by the sculptor to take its place in the holy shrine of the wax statue, the head. After a brief hiatus of continual free-flowing and energetic thought, Pygmalion brushed his hand casually over the statue's pudendum. Blood welled into his manhood like an inflating, jumping castle. He stripped naked, clenched his eyes firmly shut, and beat his thick, purpled, and vein-coated flesh off with a dozen strokes, rubbing the throbbing head against his lover's wax vagina, and tonguing its salmon-coloured lips. As he jerked himself, he began projecting a barrage of mental images towards the impending soul of the statue. She will encompass immense emotional understanding, he thought. Her intellectual comprehension will be second to none. Her cosmic awareness, creativity, imagination, and intuition will be like an act of sudden light banishing the pitch darkness. The depth and breadth of her wisdom and knowledge will be more glorious than a Swiss alpenglow. She will be physically and mentally powerful, he thought, more powerful than a pot of orcas caught in the vortex of a feeding frenzy. Her personality will be circular and mysterious, but void of any sharp, overreactive corners and irrational sharp edges that typify the vast majority of members in the female population. There will be no exaggerated tides, no wild mood swings, or overt expressions of dependence. Instinct would not override the state of being that is true and unrequited love. Pygmalion wished for a woman of intense, unique, explosive, and multidimensional vision. He was so turned on by his own visualization and powerful will that he soon tumbled over the threshold of pleasure, spurting his wet all over the bronze skin of the clay statue. After cleaning up the mess, he dropped to his knees and impressed his forehead against the statue's navel. It took a few seconds to regain his composure before generating the image of a burning star in the recesses of his own mind. This he symbolically exhaled onto the clay statue, whilst concurrently whispering the chosen name of his female entity. "Galatea," he called out, as if the intonation of the name would instantaneously animate it. Placing both hands onto the statue's breasts, Pygmalion visualized a flash of thunder and a bolt of lightning rip through the inanimate figure and jumpstart the heart. It began to thump, pumping fresh, oxygen-rich blood through the body and altering the fundamental nature of inert matter. He breathed in and out, invigorating the clay with a fiery spark of activity and silently urging it to use its mimetic facial features to physically channel the ethereal senses of its astral and mental bodies. Pygmalion knew that the clay statue would be permanently energized with a conduit of life force from the parent body of his own being if the psychic river of concentration was tempered long enough for the blood to symbolically flow through the entire statue and return to the heart area at least once. For this to eventuate, he had to respire as if he had just completed an extended session of vigorous exercise. On the 9th breath, a part of the endeavour deemed of utmost importance to magical invigoration, Pygmalion exhaled so violently that a gob of spit flew out of his mouth and struck the statue just below the jaw. "Galatea, awaken! Live! Live! Live!" he screamed out loud, somewhat astonished by the unshakable conviction in the tone of his own voice. Nothing. "Live!" he called out again, stamping his foot against the ground. Nothing. "Live, damn it!" he screamed, punching the statue in the thigh. Again nothing. Despite the incessant plea and coercion on the part of its creator, the statue remained faithful to its material composition, in other words, inactive and lifeless. It just stood there, solemn in its intellectual and mental incapacity, its soulless, unblinking eyes staring him down unsympathetically in the moonlit tones of the night. He waited and waited until his eyes watered and his head became so heavy that it was no longer possible to resist the earthward pull of gravity. In time, enthusiasm gave way to disappointment, disappointment to despair, and despair to loneliness and desolation. His meticulous and drawn-out attempts at invigoration had failed dismally. Perhaps he was remiss with practical execution, or with the magical implements deemed necessary for the endeavour to have any chance of success. Whichever the case, the tiredness had sedated him to such an extent that he was beyond knowing or caring. Pygmalion scrambled to his feet and wheeled the multi-purpose trolley upon which the clay statue rested to the queen-size bed in the adjoining room. He lifted the statue from its portable base, tipped it horizontally onto its back, pushed it onto the left-hand side of the bed, and then pulled the heavy doona over it. Once he had finished arranging the pillows about his static lover's head, he scooted on over to the opposite side and climbed in beside her. It was a frigid winter's night, and the cold seeped down through the covers and into the marrow of his very bones. His extremities were in a lamentable state, feeling as if they'd been dipped repeatedly in buckets of icy water. His chattering teeth wouldn't as much as stand up to the cold either. Pygmalion remedied both problems by rubbing his hand and feet together, an act which generated body heat rather quickly. He pivoted and stared at the profile of his beautiful lover. "At least one of us is free from the ravages of the elements," Pygmalion uttered, his arm darting across the bed to caress her. "I guess that's another good thing about not being alive." "You couldn't be more right about that," said a female voice from the region of his wax lover's mouth. "It's freezing tonight." Pygmalion nearly lost control of his bowels.